appreciate what I say now, boss. The spirit and the flesh, the emotions that arrest. The cerebral will contest, propelling the unrest. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded. The teachers pedantic and lack understanding. So sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand. Stand up, make we burn Babylon. Guess I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. With the semblance of a blaze, with gratitude and rage, we touch another page with delirious delight, impervious to light. This vitality and might encourages the flight. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded, the teachers pedantic and lack understanding. So sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand. Stand up, make we burn Babylon. Cause I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Guess I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. The world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the in the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what was behind the curtain, the face of evil lurking, with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come get it. I say, run, run, come, make me get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come get it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Hey, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Case Closed. Make sure you like and share the video. Yes, and Case Closed is a weekly show, comes to you Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern on this channel and some other channels, okay? Catch it on your dial, as they used to say. Shout out to Little Rock in the building. Shout out to Eisen in the building. Shout out to Leroy in the building. Make sure you guys, again, like, share, and subscribe. So today we're going to be talking about a campaign promise that was recently fulfilled, a campaign promise by President Joe Biden. He promised to nominate to the Supreme Court an African American female, a black female. And more on that later. Some people are not so happy about such blatant identity politicking when it comes to campaign promises. However, Justice Breyer has retired. Justice, okay, now she's about to be nominated, or she's nominated and she might become the Supreme Court Justice, but her name is Ketanji Jackson. And Ketanji Jackson is a federal judge at the DC Circuit. So, federal level appellate court, DC Circuit. And the DC Circuit has brought out a lot of, shall we say, has produced a lot of Supreme Court justices, okay, from the past. She is a graduate of Harvard Law School. She served at the Harvard Law Review, of which Barack Obama, former president, was the editor. And she was a clerk for Chief Justice, or not Chief Justice, but Supreme Court Justice Breyer, whom she's now replacing. So, law clerk for Breyer, Harvard Law Review, Harvard Law School, serving now in this particular court. So, that is the focal point of our conversation today. Okay, but first and foremost, how about we go ahead and I'll introduce ourselves real quick, starting with Dr. Thunder and then the lovely lady.
Yeah, so I'm Dr. Thunder. You know me. Ike and I have a show on this channel every Tuesday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, called Getting Ish Done. And so you know from me from that, I'm a YouTuber, musician, professor, and social commentator. Let's go.
Excellent. And Dana, what's so funny? You throwing shade on the good doctor already? Anyways, go
No.
ahead. Introduce yourself.
Y'all start trouble. Hi, everybody. This is The Real Dana, and I have my YouTube channel called The Real Dana. So check it out. Thank you for having me again, guys. This should be interesting and fun.
Yes, this should be interesting. I think the comments have already started coming in, and they're already taking us in a particular direction. Somebody has found the need to point out the race of somebody else's spouse already. Let's see. Okay, now let's start the conversation this way. Now, it is very important that communities feel, or that different groups within communities feel, that they are a part of the community. Okay, so there's an emotional need to see yourself as being represented. It encourages one. It shows that a sense of parity or equality has been being reached right now. So, starting with Dr. Thunder and then the real Dana, how important is this? Okay, just from that point of view of cold, dispassionate view of history, we've had the first black president. This is the highest court in the land. Never happened before. How important or momentous is this to that feeling of the community?
Do I have to go first on this?
Well, the real Dana can go first, and then maybe
yeah, let's have Dana go first, and then I'll hit cleanup. I'll clean up.
Well, you said how important it is for the Black community to have her be nominated.
So yeah, there are a couple of things here. She is the first, not the first black person, so I guess it's kind of Mr. What's his name? What is his name? Is Clarence Thomas? Already did that. So I guess this is it a big deal? In other words, in the black community, is it as big as a deal as the president, or not? And any comments at all as to the that feeling, that need of belonging, of moral support, even like, oh, the society supports me by me seeing these type of people. Is that important? And also, how important is the Supreme Court justiceship in that hierarchy, if you will?
Well, is it not really? No. Just to answer your question, it's not that important, especially this day and time, considering just because you're black, right? I look at it. What are you doing? What are your stance? And first of all, you're representing the American Constitution, all of America, not just black people. But the way they nominated people is really in the proper order of America: white man, white woman, gay, No, gay, Hispanic, black, no, white man, white woman, black man, gay, Hispanic, now black women. That is the order of society now, because a Hispanic woman was nominated and confirmed before a black woman. But if you look
Mhm.
at the climate of whether it's illegal immigrants or just a Hispanic population is growing. Um,
Mhm.
so, and of course, LGBTQ, they're very powerful. They are what, only 5%, less than 5% of this nation. However, they're very powerful, especially with their dollars and their power, because they organize. So they got jumped ahead before the black women and Hispanic. So yeah, the nomination coincides with the flow of America. But just because she's black doesn't mean a win
Mhm.
for black people. Yes, you should have diversity, period. But it doesn't mean a win for black people anymore because you're black, because the ideology of a lot of these black politicians, judges, whatsoever, civil service people don't align themselves with their blackness.
Okay, so thank you for reminding us of the Oppression Olympics roster and who's at the
Yes,
bottom and what the regular flow is.
that's very important.
We were in danger of forgetting there. So thank you. So, Dr. Thunder, I think that amongst other things, Dana has brought up the importance of the track record, policies, or views on interpretation of the law in this case that the individual has and the degree to which it is indeed in line with the cause, right? But you can answer the question in addition to comment on what Dana said. The question still is this a big deal? Is it important? Supreme Court Justice, the first one. And is this idea of I need to see somebody like me? Are we still in danger of the society fracturing if we don't see these people? Is it, or is that symbolism just played out, washed up, not so important anymore?
Yeah, I don't. I've never been held back by not seeing somebody that looks like me doing something. You know, that's not been a factor for me. But I do understand that people in general, that is an important thing. It is very helpful for most people. Um, you know, I'll go back to the breaking of the 4 minute mile, and that's the thing always is that people they point to is say, yeah, it's good to have someone to point to, when you're trying to accomplish something, because it makes you feel as though you can do it. You're capable, you're good enough. Somebody else did it, you can do it too. When I think of that breaking of the 4 minute mile, because then within like a week or two, dozens and dozens of folks had also broken it. It always makes me think, rather than us trying to prop up new people to be the first, and then therefore we can accomplish, we can overcome now because we've seen others. What was it about that person that broke the 4 minute mile without seeing someone else do it in the first place? Why not focus more on replicating that? Right.
Mhm.
So that's always the thought when I think of these first this and first that. Why not get into the psychology of the person that is able to overcome and without seeing someone that looks like them? Why not do that? But of course that's not sexy. That's
What is
that's
the
not
four
something that.
minute? What's the 4 minute mile?
Yeah, so it was said that it was impossible to break the 4 minute mile running the
Oh,
4 minute mile.
mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't something that anybody really tried to do, because it was like everybody said it was impossible. So then of course somebody did break the 4 minute mile, and then once they did, then within a week or something, a bunch of other folks also broke the 4 minute mile. And so that's the point.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reference.
Mhm.
But as far as look, this justice is eminently qualified. She definitely is qualified. She's educated. She's as qualified as anyone else who's served on the court. So I would throw no shade with respect to qualifications, education, intelligence, or anything like that. However, you have to question, I question, if 94 crime bill Joe Biden is nominating you, there must be something about your history, your politics that makes him comfortable to do so, right? And that usually is the question about most of the nominations made by the Democrats, because we know what their value system is. I mean, I understand what their value system is and what is important to them. And so things like being probably pro-choice, which is not particularly positive for the Black community, 670 per 1,000 pregnancies end in Noit Roba, if you can follow that backwards. And that's devastating. And it's, all of these sorts of policies disproportionately affect our community. It's a lot of experimenting, and we are the guinea pigs.
Okay, we're going to neatly place all these, by the way. We're going to talk about the substance, and we're going to talk about, but now we're starting out with what Mr. K. Polymath might call FE. We're talking about that feeling of acceptance and such. And you're saying, let me ask you, yes or no question, okay? Is it still important that this be seen in order for societal cohesion? Because we must admit that there is a premise that for there to be societal cohesion, people have to feel like they're part of it. Otherwise, they will fucking blow up. This is the truth about people, right? So is at this point in America in 2020, is this kind of symbolic representation still important in this case for African Americans?
Look, Black folks need to stop. We'll take a, what is it? We'll take a symbol. We'll take a symbol over actually substance, something that actually helps. We got to stop doing that. And I realize that it is the case that people are very much affected by seeing evidence of accomplishment, by seeing other people that look like them. I understand that, but we need to get beyond that, because they're using that as a way to smuggle in all kind of nefarious and stuff, stuff that totally destroys us.
So they're smuggling in the F3 now. Dana, you have said, look, it doesn't really matter whether they're Black or not. It's about the positions that they take. Is it going to further us or not? We're not going to you're going to have the wool pulled over our eyes again. And Dr. Thunder says the same thing, while both of you are agreeing that she is eminently qualified. Now,
well, I wouldn't say she's qualified, but go ahead.
Okay.
I want to hear that.
I want to. Okay. Let me ask you this: when you say qualified, I was saying in terms of the bare minimum, in terms of you got that degree over there, you got promoted over here, you're now at the DC Circuit, appellate court, federal judge level. Obviously not an idiot, and you got the right pedigree. That's basic qualified that I was saying. Do you disagree with that?
I mean, as far as your education and the experience that she has, because she was a federal judge, correct?
Correct.
Right. So, I mean, she does have experience of being a judge and being a judge on a federal level. So as far as her resume on paper, you could say she's qualified, but what does those judgments that she sat on and gave a verdict on, what are those? What does that look like? And I do have an article here of a Black man federal judge asked Biden not to tap Ketanji Brown Jackson for Supreme Court. And it's not because she doesn't have the education or even the experience. It's her judgment, how she's judging somebody or has judged some of these cases. Now, going back to Biden with the crime bill and his history as far as with Black folk, even though Black people always unanimously vote Democrat, and they have to stop doing that to a certain degree. But another reason why I think he did pick her is because if reparations eventually get brought up to the Supreme Court, she's going to be one of the people that vote against it. Because of her track record that this particular federal judge is highlighting of how she handles down judgments. What do you call verdicts, judgments, whatever that
It could be called
ruling,
rulings. Typically,
rulings.
yeah.
That's the word.
Rulings. Yeah,
Rulings.
yeah.
Yes. So it's not so much of her education. Yes, you have the experience of being something, right? But what is your track record of your rulings? What does that look like? That's most important than your skin color.
That's most important. Okay. Now, I would suggest that in the interest of having a actual society where there's a kind of a dichotomy of different ideas, we need to have an understanding of what qualifies you that's below the level of what your particular stances are on policy, right? Because you have a particular stance that says, hey, you know, she's going to vote against X, she's going to vote against Y, therefore she's not for me. But that doesn't mean that we should not have a way of judging people whether they should come to the court other than whether they agree or not, agree with us, if that makes sense. In other words, like we can't get if the dumbass down the street, okay, agrees with you on rulings, should we put him in the Supreme Court, right? So she passes the basics, is what I'm saying. Like she is not like, oh, she doesn't belong there, if you will.
But I mean, but everybody passes the basics. Like you
Everybody,
cannot.
whoa,
Well, you can't. You're not going to be
second.
nominated. You're not going to be nominated.
Okay, gotcha.
For
okay, you're
the
saying
Supreme
okay
Court if you don't
Gotcha.
have that type of education. But again, it is biased because it's that Biden administration, the Democrats who are nominating this Supreme Court justice. And I'm concerned because not just only ruling on, let's say, for example, reparations, if it gets to that point, but what about taking the side of corporations over regular people? So, and that's what this judge highlighted. It was a case that she resided over. Particularly, it was majority of Black people that work for this private sector, this big corporation, sued the company for racism and other damages. They won a judgment, but she ruled for them not to receive the settlement money. I will have to read it. So if you want me to read the clip,
not a problem, because obviously there's always the question as to what the law has to say about things, right?
So,
and just because she ruled in one way in her conscience, she's like, I'm looking at the law and this is what the law has to say about it. If you have a problem with the law, go to your legislative department, right?
But it wasn't that, because they won the case. So the retired judge that wanted to point this out to the Biden administration pointed out to a case, Ross versus Lockheed, 2016 class action lawsuit brought forward on behalf of 5,500 Black Lockheed Martin employees as a basis for his opposition to the Jackson potential nomination. Jackson proceeded over the case. Clemens said in a letter that the judge failed to greenlight the settlement that was reached, which was set to disperse $22 million to the employees. She refused to approve the settlement because, in her view, there were no common factual questions. So
let me take you back one step, because we'll get into in a broader way, because you might, the people will, if you get into this immediately, we'll get into
right. That's what I'm saying. So I'll just hold that. Yeah, I'll take it up.
But still, I don't think we've gotten over because look, shout out to Kyodor, by the way. I mean, this is very generous, very early in the show. Make sure you guys like, share, subscribe. Okay, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and make sure you like and you share the stream. The stream, that is not the screen. Always helpful. Now, shout out to Kyodor for the $50 super chat. Very, very, very generous of you, sir. Now, if I take a step back to the question of feeling represented and all that kind of stuff. See, one of the the first few comments that we came up with here is the idea of she's of African descent, or her husband is a white doctor. Okay. In other words, even amongst this particular small sample of the chat, we haven't left the land of representation and this and that, and whom is a doctor of a white, who married, who's a swirler, and who's not. So, Dr. Thunder, you want to? No. Dana, you start, okay?
All right.
This issue of whom is authentically black enough to be that face. Even we haven't gone. We're not going near policy yet.
She is
Okay,
foundational Black American. Both her parents, they're from here.
somebody
She
doesn't like her name or something. I think someone's like Ketanji. What's
okay.
that?
How many Black people we know that grew up in a Black community? Shaniqua or they had African names. I'm sorry, Zakia. It's African names from Africa, but they're foundational Black Americans. Her parents are foundational. She was born in D.C., raised in Florida. So her parents are from the United States. They're not immigrants here. So she's foundational. Unless somebody, if you're saying she's not, please cite your source where you got it from saying that she's not. But I did the research. I didn't find that she was not. So she is African American, i.e. foundational Black American. However, honestly, so yes, we have to discuss that. But she's foundational Black American, and honestly, can I say shit?
Okay, go ahead.
She's full of shit still.
Okay,
when
cool.
you have
So,
yeah,
because it's almost like you're gonna say that it doesn't matter if she is or isn't. Go ahead.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
And another thing, you have to take gender when you look at Black women now in the legal sector, in law enforcement. You have a lot of Black women who are anti-Black, especially against Black men, making these judgments.
Thank you.
Well, continue, Dr. Thunder. I feel like you have something to say about this.
Look, see, this is
common.
This is why. Look, this is why I question nominations from Democrats. So just because they're Black or they're Hispanic or whatever, that kind of stuff, you know what the core value is. So I'm an academic, and I have said many times that diversity and inclusion is nothing but affirmative action reborn, with one tweak. Now we know that with affirmative action, initially it was laser focused on Black men. But because of Title IX, when women were deemed minorities, the effect of that was that 84% of the recipients were white women. Okay? 84% of the recipients of affirmative action were white women. So all of those arguments that you hear people saying, hey, with this, the Black person, they only got the job because of X, Y, and Z, this kind of stuff. All of that stuff is just theater, because 84% of the recipients were white women. Now, with diversity and inclusion, which is just affirmative action remarketed, they never had the original sentiment of serving Black men. And so they have been able to come in and not even address any issues related to Black men and boys. Totally bypass us, don't even have to talk about us, and go directly to what their agendas are, which are not to serve us. Okay? And so when I see stuff like this, when you promote someone, say, hey, she's black, so then that means that X, Y, and Z. Well, the thing is that an issue with this whole diversity thing is that though they want you to look different, they want you to say the same stuff. They don't want you thinking different.
Let me ask you this real quick, Dr. Thunder, and then I want Dana to kind of respond as well, because what you're saying is important. However, it is a broader issue, is it not? In other words, the face is important for certain things, for emotional reasons, right? The face is important for emotional reasons. The face, the representation, she is Black, that kind of a thing. Okay, fine. Moral support is needed. But it tends to be the case that we only get the face that is tied to a particular ideological position. Okay, in other words, and it is a reflection of fact that ADOS is uncritically wedded to the Democrat Party. Now, this is not, and I don't go as far as to say whether or not the Democrat Party is a bad thing or not. I'm saying uncritically wedded to the percentages are crazy. It's not natural. In other words, if you come from outer space and you see how all these other groups are distributed, and then you see one group that's just kind of tied to the hip to this thing, it seems a little bit unnatural. Okay, so is that the case that you're basically making? Okay, that we only seem to get the black face coming from a particular place. Otherwise, it's not black. It's some kind of Uncle Tom or something, if it's not that. So is this the issue? Uncritically wedded to Democratic Party, hence we only get one kind of blackface. First of all, Dr. Thunder, and then Dana.
Okay, so I want to talk about bias for a second. So the thing is that everyone is biased. I don't care. I don't care who it is. I don't care because you're a judge, or I don't care if you're a lawyer, you're whatever it is. You can be paid not to be biased, and you're still biased. Okay, so then when people try to act like things are balanced and level, that's when my ears perk up, because they are trying to smuggle something in. Okay. What I like to do is I just tell people what my biases are.
Up front. Okay.
I tell them I'm an advocate of black men and boys. And because of that, I'm not satisfied with this nomination, because I know I know the kinds of rulings that come from judges that have been nominated by Democrats in particular, and they have not been positive for us, for black men and boys. It has only created more issues. It's everything has gotten worse. When everyone else is getting better, we have gotten worse. And when we have even done things like wave the flag to say, look, Black Lives Matter is not for black men and boys. Oh, you're just saying that. Oh, can't you just be happy because we have, because people are at least listening to us now? But now, I don't know if you knew this, but one of the founders just came out saying that we didn't create this movement for men. It was only for basically women. This movement was for women, not for black men and boys. It's almost a direct quote of what she said, right? So,
yeah. Of which, by the way, she has every right to start anything.
And she can do that. She can, and no problem. There's no problem with that. But my point is, there is no such thing as being unbiased. Everyone is biased. Everyone leans in a particular direction. I would prefer to know the direction that you lean in. And when they try to smuggle it in and try to act like someone is unbiased, that's when I'm concerned.
So Dana, you brought up some areas on the policy side of things. You talk about, siding with corporations over, shall we say, the masses. And you talk about also some things that are not good for black people. Is this issue mainly upstream or downstream from this democratic problem, which we're talking about, which is unless and until the face that you get doesn't always come from a particular side of the aisle, that if it's not from that side of the aisle, then it's not authentically black, then there's no point in arguing about the policies and stuff like that, because you're not going to get real competition downstream. It's just going to be, because it's all coming out of the same pipe. It's all coming out of the same pipeline. If it doesn't come out of that pipeline, then it's not legit. How big of that is a problem? Again, this uncritical wedding of the African American to the Democrat Party.
Yeah, that's the main problem that we're having right now when we talk about politics. And to me, when I look at black people in the black community, we do not participate in the science of politics on any level.
Nope.
What's most important is your local level than it is the federal level. But you have people, regular folk, running around here, screaming, "Oh, elect a black woman to be your VP," calling her black. Okay, he elected her to be his VP. There, she's the VP. What has she done? She
married to a white man too.
I mean, yes, okay. I don't all that marriage stuff. I don't deal with that. I deal with what are your policies. What has she done? Nothing specifically for just black people as a whole. She said it. Am I going to do something specifically for black people? No, right? You're going to do it for all Americans. However, you created economic empowerment for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. You helped pass a law, a hate crime from Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. She's doing everything for Asians. She's even calling herself Asian. She's no longer calling herself black. So when are we going
Mamala.
When are we going to remove the wool from over our eyes and stop getting into this sister girl or my brother's keeper type thing? And yeah, and then if you do push back, if you do say, well, I'm not a Democrat, or I voted for Trump, or I don't subscribe to CRT, oh, then you're a coon, a grifter, or whatever, right? You ain't black. Just pure ignorance. And this is from people who are supposed to be highly educated. And this is for regular folk on a ground level who just don't care. And the reason why I really do appreciate this judge, no matter what race he is. But if it was a white man that came out with that letter to Biden saying that you should not nominate her, then it would have said, oh, he's racist. Okay, this was a black federal judge that said that you should not nominate her because you're doing it. She's a black woman. She's sister girl for the race. But her judgment.
Black girl magic.
But her judgment, and let me just read this passage that he said. Judge Jackson gave the axe to the settlement designed to benefit black workers at one of the nation's largest employers, denied the injunctive relief agreed to by Lockheed Martin that would have addressed a root cause of systemic racial bias, going back to Dr. Thunder with the bias, that could have been a model for a nation hungry for racial equity solutions, denied the black workers the right to seek evidence to prove their claim of company-wide racial discrimination, and knowingly frustrated the rights of black workers to appeal her decision. So when we're talking about systemic racism and we're talking about symbolism, putting a black woman in the Supreme Court is not the answer or the recipe of fighting systemic racism. She is the fabric and the problem of recycling systemic racism. So it does matter. It does not matter your gender or your race. It does matter. I want to see your resume of your rulings. That's more important.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, Dr. Thunder, super chat duty, real quick. Let's run through these.
Is my mic low?
No, your mic is fine.
Okay.
Your mic is fine. You've got a good level. Sounding good. So Colin Okoye, $49.99 iOS user, super chat, very, very much appreciated. Big up to my brother Ike.
Thank you. And who we got next? Thank you very much.
Yeah. Mr. Awesome, $5. So which is the more valid or correct diversity? Diversity of thought or diversity of color? Do you think a valid third party would solve some issues?
Okay.
If I could go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to answer the first part of the question and the general part, which is I would say that there are two domains of these two domains should be separate. The domain of diversity of background, okay, the domain of diversity of culture, diversity of look, and all that kind of stuff is quite separate from the domain of diversity of thought. Now, to the degree to which thought is very important, or whatever the skill is, whatever it is that you're doing there, if it's judgeship, then okay, well, yeah, then you want diversity of interpretations of the Constitution, for example. That is quite important. But also, I would say, for statistical, game theoretic, evolutionary reasons, you also want diversity of backgrounds, okay, because of the kinds of things that brings that you do not understand, right, or you cannot completely account for or argue about. However, you should be looking at the idea side of things very thoroughly and very clearly, but also saying, hey, you know what, let's get a guy from the other side of the tracks too. But he's going to pass through the same rubric of being qualified and so on and so forth. And we're also working on the diversity of thought. But anyways, go ahead, respond, sir.
Yeah, so absolutely, diversity of thought is the most important thing. Okay. Now, one thing that's happening, I alluded to this before in universities. Remember, university means unity in diversity. Unity in diversity. And why is it that institutions called universities require interdisciplinarity? It's totally redundant. Okay. And the reason is because there is not the kind of diversity of thought diversity. There's not the kind of promotion of diversity really in university system. They're much more happy with bringing in folks that have a different look, but that are saying the same things. That's a priority for them. And university system, understand, is feeding much of the philosophy that we see, a lot of the political philosophy and stuff that we see. And the folks are being trained in universities, and the kinds of things that they're going to be fooled by are going to be similar things because they're coming out of institutions that have a particular line of thought they're promoting, which that's not what education is supposed to be. And the other thing about the third party thing, so I've interviewed on my Conversations with Dr. Thunder series, Larry Sharp, who was he's a black libertarian. He was a gubernatorial candidate in New York State. He didn't win because he's third party, but he has policy prescriptions for almost anything that you can imagine. He actually has a very interesting take on reparations. That's a recent episode. I think it's episode 190. I think it's episode 190. So go and check that out. It was released about 2 weeks ago, and we talked on a variety of different topics. But the whole third party thing, I think, is critically important. I think more black folks need to be willing to seriously consider third party candidates. This whole Democrat versus Republican thing has not served us. It has not served us. Neither party has. Look, where we are right now is they are jointly culpable. Democrats and Republicans are jointly culpable for where we are right now, for the state of the black community, for the state of black men and boys. Both parties are jointly culpable. So we need to start seriously considering other options. And we need to do it in high enough numbers that it makes people take notice. Because right now, they don't even try to make deals with us. Republicans don't even try. They don't even come to our neighborhoods, during election seasons. They don't even come because they think it's a waste. It's a waste of time. And the Democrats, they show up at our churches, but they don't do a dadgum thing, and they don't even promise us anything at this point. They don't even make a deal.
Is the local solution apt here? Well, I think it is, and I'll let you respond here, the real Dana. Basically, when it comes to the politics, besides the fact that, we need to funnel more people into the third party, we also talk about funneling perhaps people, just at least splitting them up such that people are able to, it'll add to the wheeling and dealing, splitting them up, Democrat, Republican, not even third yet, because it will add to the whole dealing and recognition aspect of things. But also there's the local side of politics, which you emphasize sometimes, and I think Dana mentioned earlier, which is it's about the PTA meeting and the dog catcher and your local sheriff and the local judge and the little mayor and the little curb because the pothole in the corner that affects your life and all other little things about, let's say, maybe the taxes that go to the schools, your property tax and stuff like that, is in that local level. And also you can then begin to build up grassroots organizations that affect the politics up in the higher level. In other words, this kind of focus on, who's a Supreme Court, this, that, and the other, and then not. Anyways, I'm sorry. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, so I'll say something, and then I'll give it to Dana. But on the federal level, it doesn't matter if a Democrat or a Republican's in the White House. It only makes about 3% difference in policy. And so, in other words, in our day-to-day lives, it only makes about 3% difference. Really, we should be hyper-focused on local politics because that's the politics that we're going to feel, and it's going to have a much more profound impact on our day-to-day life. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah, I want to just to add on to that. The purpose of the Supreme Court is to make sure that the federal government is not impeding on the states, because the state and federal are separate. The states are a sovereignty. And a lot of people look at Clarence Thomas as a coon or whatever, right? But one thing about Clarence Thomas, and Judge Joe Brown told me this, he protects the Constitution. And you're not going to find a lot of people who are into protecting the Constitution. And that's very important because the Constitution is to make sure that the state is protected or separate from the federal government. And that's what the Constitution...
Sorry, Dana. This is too delicious for me not to push back on you here, just to see how where you stand on it, okay? Because originalism, following the Constitution the way it is, that the fact that states' rights are important and limiting the government, you believe in limited government, you believe the foundations and you need to stick to it. Then the pushback, and I'm sure you've heard before, is the idea of, well, the living Constitution, the living and breathing, it needs to morph. And what does the Constitution know about Google and the new challenges that we face? Maybe we need to, things need to be more federalized and they need to evolve. In other words, all that evolution, evolve, living, breathing type pushback. What do you say to that? Do you say, for me, for example, I say, hey, no, we can evolve while following a path. Okay, but what do you say about the pushback?
Well, the Constitution was created to protect the states from the federal government. The Constitution wasn't for us individually per se. It was to protect the states from the federal government impeding on their sovereignty rights. That's what the Constitution is for. Now, when you look at the preamble, the right to, what does it say? Oh my God. The pursuit of happiness. That's for us.
Yeah.
So you have the right to go out and get it.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Yep.
The federal government is not supposed to give you welfare, blah, blah, blah. No, but the purpose of the United States, the reason why it was created is the pursuit of happiness. Go out and find something to make you happy, and I'm not going to stop you, which is why the Constitution and the Supreme Court is there to protect the Constitution, to separate the federal from the state, which goes back to why it's important to focus on your local, because each state has different state laws. And within that state, you have counties and then you have cities, and they have different laws or legislation and stuff like that, which is going to affect you first indirectly. Still got to pay your taxes on the federal, but you still got to pay taxes on state as well. So if you're not partaking, and so going back to the political parties, it doesn't matter if it's a third party. Third party could be is no party. You have the main parties are Republican and Democrat. A lot of Black people, majority of Black people live in a Democratic district. It's not, a lot of those districts are not going to change. They're not in a flip district. So what you need to make sure is that you are voting and investing or propping up the right politician to represent you. Dr. Amos Wilson said it best. We are the forecasters. The politician is just a presenter, but we don't operate that way. Everybody else does, Asians, immigrants, even illegal immigrants. But we vote without doing our research, without investing our money, and we just think we're going to the polls and vote, then everything will be taken care of. No, it does not work like that. So local politics first, deal with the federal later.
Yeah.
Colin Okoye says, make people buy your vote. Indeed, that is the idea, pursuit of happiness, individual, therefore, state protect, federal government protect the states, keep things down to as local as possible, because the local is where you get feedback, right? Local is where, you bump up against reality. The road is going to affect you. So the local is where the best judgment is made. We know about this kind of a... Can
I give one example with the local? Because AOC, as batshit crazy as she is, right? Why is she still in Congress? Because of her 2 districts that she represents in New York, the Bronx and the Queens. And someone who told me, he is a Democrat, whatever, a Black man, he said that if she keeps these potholes filled, right, fixing these potholes and doing what we need for the homeowners and stuff like that, she's going to keep being reelected, which means you're going to keep seeing her in the House of Representatives with her voting for the DNC because you were put there in Congress. And a lot of people don't know how Congress is made up. How are these people elected? Where they come from? They come from our local. But she's going to stay in position of power because she makes sure that her constituents, where her district is at, is being taken care of if they are making sure holding her to that.
Dr. Thunder, if you don't mind, the next super chat, Eisen Sama in the building. Shout out to the Bleach fans over there. What does he?
Yeah. The plan has always been for Black America to be what it is now. The men supporting and pushing the women to their own detriment by the government and women.
Shout out to you. And we have another one over here.
Yeah, that is, thank you very much, K Polymath. That's $1.76 in United States currency, because I knew Ike was going to be curious. Thank you very much for the support.
He's out here acting like O'Shea, because O'Shea shows up like with 10,000 of some random Eastern European countries. Anyways, okay, so I think that we've made a couple of points clear, which is that blackface obviously does not necessarily mean Black representation. And the idea of symbolic representation, perhaps that's an issue more of the past. We should be moving past that. It becomes now a hindrance, right? That now you should be more looking at the substance of the people. Okay, now let's take it back to this point of, we looked at the Democrat Party side of why we always get one particular type of blackface, one particular type of representation, with coming with one particular set of ideologies. But there's also another side to it too, in the sense that, well, let's look within the community. What, because if you were seeing that in the macro level, there's something within the community, okay, that makes it such that this is the case. Dr. Thunder, why is it the case that you cannot get a Thomas Sowell to be your blackface? Why can you not get a Dr. Thunder to be your blackface, depending on what's going on? Maybe Dr. Thunder in this particular case represents a great amount of skill in music. Okay, I was listening to you and Dr. Doug Tuck the other day, and about, like, let's say the Black church. Okay, and so they don't really want the Dr. Thunder level of music. They're rather someone that's a little bit more broken or something. In other words, what makes somebody an Uncle Tom? Is Uncle Thomism a problem? Let's psychoanalyze this Uncle Thomism problem, because it leads to the situation whereby you only get one face, because only one face is legitimately Black.
Yeah. So that's something that we've played into very much to our detriment, is that, it's like Joe Biden said, if, you ain't Black if you don't vote for a Democrat. If you can't tell that Democrats are the ones that are for you, you ain't Black. And what it is that you saw speaking on, I did a show, Thunder's Thoughts, this past Thursday. What's up there now is about an hour and a half shorter episode, because the copyright came in and got us, and I had to cut a bunch of stuff out of the video. But we did an episode called the bamboozling of the Black male image. And we talk very much about this whole blackface thing. It's not, see, the thing is about the blackface thing. It's not just about sort of appeasing, making it look like it's fair and like everybody's represented. Very much, actually, it's actually sort of a buffoonery. It's actually trying to make fun of us. And so we have to be smart enough to know when we're being used and propped up to actually make fun of us, as a people. The Uncle Tom thing is interesting, because actually Uncle Tom was the hero in the story that's from. Sambo is the actual Uncle Tom, as it were. And so with that expression, it also shows a sort of buffoonery, because they don't even understand the story. Folks that use that expression don't know enough about the story that it's from. it was just used as a pejorative, so they just jumped on and started using it. But actually, it's not the Uncle Tom. It's actually Sambo. This Sambo is who you don't want to be. Uncle Tom is who you want to be in that story.
Can I push back a little bit on that? What you were saying?
Go ahead.
Because I agree with you. That's true. That was the concept of that story. But I think throughout the decades after that book came out, the people that looked at Uncle Tom as something negative were more radical, because when you have the Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael, the Black Panther,
Right.
they wasn't
more anarchist. Yeah.
So they were more radical. They were more revolutionary, to whereas Uncle Tom was the opposite. No, Uncle Tom is not your enemy, but they are more passive when it came to white people. WS, I don't say the two words on YouTube. But so they were a little bit more passive, to whereas, yes, Sambo was just someone who just hated being Black or whatever. But that's why Uncle Tom was looked at negative, because of when Black people started to become more revolutionary. You know, when, like I said, the Black Panthers and stuff like that, because they're like, listen, I'm not being nice. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going, when you look at Martin Luther King, some people will call him a coon because that nonviolent. No, you know, so radicalized Black people was not with the nonviolent. If you spit on me, I'm gonna knock you out. If you have a gun, I'm gonna make sure I have a gun, you know? So I think that's where the negative tone of Uncle Tom started to be negative, or looked at upon as negative, because of the Black people becoming more revolutionary.
Yeah. So
would you agree, or?
Well, I won't disagree. But I will say that I don't know that most people
from the outside. Someone who's hearing it as a somewhat outsider.
Sure, go ahead.
I do see the leaning to the need to lean towards passion as opposed to the cerebral ways of fighting or dealing with things kind of arises in certain points of time, right? So if you are not with it and you're not committed and you're not down and you're an Uncle Tom, let's say, that might be the case. That's an insult that only applies in certain times. You know, you're only an appeaser when we're at war. Until then, maybe the appeasement mind state or the cooler heads prevailing, the non-Uncle Tom way makes sense. But I'm seeing how a negative connotation can come out of, you know, of somebody not leaning towards the passions in times where others might seem that it may be necessary.
And I think because you are outsider looking in and just describing it as leaning towards passion, and just that whole way you describe it is completely wrong. When we look at, let's say, for instance, the Black Panthers, it wasn't about passion. You know, it was about getting stuff done ourselves in the community, direct effect. And these are intelligent Black people.
Yeah, they were more separatist. Yeah,
who studied, who knew the law inside and out, because that's how they created WIC, the Black Panthers. That WIC came from the Black Panthers. They created all types of programs. But of course, when you have COINTELPRO, J. Edgar Hoover, the federal government, even on a state level, the government period, painted them as being public enemy number one, because they were not taking nothing from no white man or anybody, and they wanted Black people to have power. So that's where Uncle Tom is more like, let's just kind of keep the peace and work within the system. And I get it, but let me just say this, and then you could go. But it's a time for everything. So let's say from the 60s to the 70s, a lot of people fought and died for us, being the revolutionaries that they were and still are today. They sacrificed their lives, their livelihood, so that we can have the freedoms as Black people today. And we're not utilizing that sacrifice. So you don't have to be like the Black Panthers were in the 60s, because they already did that, right? Going back to your point, Ike, there is a time and place, you know, to behave a certain way. But it was a time to be a revolutionary. But it's a different type of revolutionary today, because we have technology or whatever, and we're just not utilizing it.
Yeah. So the reason I said that I won't disagree, I just think that there's a certain amount of nuance that you're applying to this that I think that the people in mass that use the terminology are totally and completely unaware of. They're not thinking with that kind of nuance. And for the most part, when they say Uncle Tom, they are talking about folks that are basically self-hating, black folks doing stuff that's acting outside of their own interest, basically cooning for the master, as it were. And that aspect of it clearly is the Sambo character and is not the quote unquote Uncle Tom's character. It's unfortunate that you can't have, I interviewed Minister Jap, and the name of that episode was on Conversations with Dr. Thunder. It was called, "But Is the Straight, Free-Thinking Black Man Protected?" And I'll tell you, which would be totally, you can predict this. In one of the comments, someone actually asked the question, is straight free thinking another way to justify being homophobic? That's what somebody put down as a comment, right? So it's seen as being so threatening to be straight and free thinking as a black man. That's not that. It is the only unprotected group, and it's the group that is seen with a kind of we have to say certain things. If you step outside of the sort of orthodoxy, you're going to have people make certain kinds of comments and using fear tactics and thing to try to bring you back in line. And so if it sounds like you're not going to be liberal, left leaning, and if you're not going to be down for all of the, left leaning causes, that's going to be a problem. And so folks like Thomas Sowell, Clarence Thomas, and the like, there should be a space for them, for folks that have those kinds of positions. Now, I don't consider myself left or right. I'm perhaps more conservative with respect to financial things. I do have a soft place for certain social programs, which there has been a history of some of those social programs actually helping black people. And so I have a soft place for that in a way that conservatives do not. I'm in favor of the original purposes of affirmative action, but I don't like the fact that every time my dad, who had an IQ of 160, by the way, and scored the highest, he scored the highest on an entrance exam for employment as a state bureaucrat in the history of the state. But every time he was promoted, the scuttlebutt and the whispering was the only reason that he was promoted was because of affirmative action. My dad was the smartest person in the room all the time. He was a member of Mensa, actually. He was the smartest person in the room all the time. And yet the reason that he was promoted was because of affirmative action every time.
Who were the people that were whispering, it was because of affirmative action?
Oh, white folks.
White women?
No, not white. Well, I don't know how much. Well, it would have been white.
This particular white women on the screen right here.
Because white women, affirmative action was for them because they benefited the most than anybody. Now, what's replacing white women are Asians and illegal immigrants and immigrants. They're replacing white women when it comes to affirmative action.
Yeah. So anyhow.
Interesting. Okay, so, and I dropped the link to a couple of people here whom expressed interest in saying a couple of things. Lion Legal, okay, I gave you the link over there in the chat. You are, after all, a legal stalwart
lion.
Arts, a legal lion. Shout out to you, sir. Do you mind giving us your thoughts, Mr. Lion Legal.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can hear you okay. Now, you can comment on whichever. We've talked about the face versus representation aspect. How important is it, the emotional aspect of seeing somebody representing you versus actually the actual policy positions or rulings, or shall we say interpretations of the law in this case, that favor you, and how to play about, in the best way, game theoretically, this political game in the political landscape and all those other things. But go ahead. You may also have some
Okay.
legal insights being a legal person. So go
Being
ahead.
a lion. Sure.
Being a lion.
Well, if you have a client, let's say it's a criminal defense client, and they have to go to court and they have their life on the line. The most important thing you're going to be concerned about when you face a judge is, where is the judge going to come out on the facts of the case? Okay. Anytime that you have social issues that you're concerned about, and that issue is pushed up to a court of appeals, Supreme Court, the most important thing is, where is the judge going to come down based on the facts of the case? You don't care about what background the judge is, what they look like, etc., whether they're green or blue. It's about how are they going to interpret the law. Aside from that, of course, representation is also incredibly important, because there's a psychological effect there. Young kids will look up and think, I can be that. It's inspirational. And the fact is, human beings are very biased creatures. Law is a lot about discretion. There are some things that go on in a courtroom. There are some things that a juror will interpret that is based on their own life experience. Therefore, it makes sense to have judges in place that have a variety of life experiences too. So that's the good part about it. The problem is that if you have a politicized environment by which you choose a judge, so a judge is chosen by a political party, and that, or obviously by the president, and the implication will be that, is this going to be a judge that will rule in favor of any presidential policies, initiatives that come up in court? Fine. How does that impact the Black community in general? That's the real question to get to. And just to close with saying that we have to remind ourselves of several times we have fallen for the identity politics or symbolism, etc., and it's not inert to our benefit. So simply looking for a black face is not enough. We need the black face and the policies and the actual action behind it.
So
why change the playbook if it's been so effective? Keep running the ball. So it's like, if you're running the ball, you're gashing them, to 20 yards, 30 yards, 40 yards. Why change it? Just keep running the ball. Don't get tricky. Don't try to get clever. Just keep running the ball. They can't figure it out. So
you're stating about the likelihood of things to change or not to change. Now, Lion Legal, a couple of things you said there, and I want Dana to respond, perhaps. To get you correctly, yes, on the one hand, representation is important from a life experience mode. I think I kind of made something similar of that kind of an argument, talking about the things we cannot account for in terms of how people make their decisions. So you may want to get people from opposite sides of the train tracks just to see, right? And then, however, you say it is very important regarding their positions and the outcome, their judgments on the case. Okay, if you're an actual defendant in a case or something like that, that's all that matters. How is this judge likely to rule, right? And then you say, in a politicized landscape, okay, it muddies up the water a little bit. But I want to go back to Dana and ask you this, because you mentioned also, Lion Legal, that you're falling for the okie doke a couple of times before. So let's go back to Barack Obama, if you will, Dana. And you may also mention regarding the article that you were reading about her positions on certain things. Perhaps you're talking about the company and how she ruled, right? I think it was a case of discrimination, perhaps. But let's ask the Obama question. Was Obama's policies? I think the Obama case was more momentous in terms of the emotional side of things and the representation. Granted, okay, all good, everybody saluted and celebrated, right? But how,
I know, go
looking
for it.
back now, what do you think about his policies, his positions, his legacy, if you will? Starting with Dana.
Well, he never created any policies for Black America, specifically for us. He did a couple of initiatives. My Brother Keeper was one of them. But his legacy is solidified. They just broke ground of the new library in Chicago. But you look at Chicago, you look at the Black side of Chicago, it's a S-hole. So the thing is, presidents are chosen. They're not, so to say, voted in. They are handpicked. He does
Yeah.
not identify with being what it's like to be a foundational Black American / ADOS, because he is not. His father is from Africa. His mother is a white woman. He had a Indonesian stepfather who was wealthy. Obama came into office as the wealthiest president ever sitting. He came out, and with all the deals he has, even more wealthier than all the presidents. So he comes from wealth. He does not know what it's like to grow up poor and Black in America. But I voted for him twice because I thought, of course, you are not going to get up there on your first term, and we're in a recession and say black, or anything Black. I get it, because you had to clean up the mess. Second term, still did nothing. But the difference between the first and the second term, Black people still didn't demand, not ask, they didn't demand anything. So I don't blame him, I blame us. We have to learn how to take accountability. We talk about women have a problem taking accountability, true, but Black people as a whole, we do not take accountability of our faults. So we did not demand anything from Biden. We did not demand anything from Hillary Clinton, from Biden, from Kamala. We didn't demand nothing, which is why we're not getting anything. So now that the midterms are coming up, the Biden administration on a president and vice president is the lowest ever in history. Their ratings, they're going to get plummeted. So the Congress is going to be Republican controlled, which is why now Shirley, whoever, the Congresswoman's having a reparations talk and wanting to pass the HR 40 bill through the House. Forget about the HR 40 bill, because that's nothing. That's just a study. We don't even need a study. So who cares? You're still going to get voted out of Congress, the people that are up for re-election. So again, Obama legacy is solidified on a personal level for him and his family, not for us. He does not and never did represent Black people.
All right.
And
Dr.
what happened
Thunder,
with
and then
My Brother's Keeper, by the way? What happened with My Brother's Keeper? Why did that fall apart?
It's a nonprofit organization, and I was told that because he was no longer in office, yes, he switched it to nonprofit, which was business-wise, yes, that was better. But where is it now? Because now it's nonprofit, which means it's private, right? So now you have to go. I know in Newark, New Jersey, they created the My Brother's Keeper initiative program. I don't know what they're doing in that program, because I'm not a Black man, but I don't know what is that? How's the program doing on a local level?
So what happened? When he was in office was that the Black feminists came in and saying, "Hey, where's our piece? This is for, I see you got this for Black boys, but we got to get something from this too." And so what happened is that it became basically a ineffective non-issue, because the same thing that usually happens is, sorry to say, our women, they have to have their own thing. We can't talk about Black people. They say, where's the stuff for Black women? So wait a minute, women are part of the people. And so we'll start fighting ourselves rather than actually going and requiring that the government actually serve us.
I don't want to be rude and interrupt. Hello, Ike. Thank you for putting me on. Oops. Sorry.
Go ahead. Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. I respect what you all have to say, but the biggest thing is we collectively as a group in America don't have a set agenda with core values that could allow us to agree on certain things while going on different political avenues. That is the biggest problem. I think we've strayed away from a core standard and decorum as a collective group. We've become kind of a whipping boy for the country, and we've not allowed ourselves to vocalize our issues that are not so political. I think an emphasis should be placed on how we are treated as people and citizens in the country overall. That's a fact, because you could get yourself harassed as a Black Republican, as a Democrat, or whatever group you're in. You get harassed a certain way, and I think we don't focus on these core things enough. Now, we do need to have differences. We can't be so homogenous because we cannot initiate any change. Everyone talks about the president, this and that, but how often do we go to our school boards? How often do we go to our ombudsmen, our local people, and take hold of these things and grab them by the reins? How often do we move to certain communities where there are low populations and say, let's make a difference and let's take a senator for ourselves and move in bulk when we have financial power? You could be a janitor and move with the group, and you can have doctors move in the group collectively. You go to a state like North Dakota, South Dakota, you get 100,000 people or even 50,000 people come together that are different economic echelons and go to that state. You now control a couple of congressmen and even a senator possibly. Things can be done, but we have to think that way and be aggressive in a clear, concise, efficient way. Now, when it comes to certain wealth things, you could have a rich stepdaddy, but that doesn't make you rich. I'll leave that one alone. But it's
no, he's wealthy. He's not rich. He's wealthy. That money was handed down to Barack Obama.
Well, whatever the case may be, what he has in his pocket doesn't affect me. What I look at is what affects my daughter, and what affects me as a human and future generations. Like locally, you have to get active. In the schools, you have to get active. And you can't always allow certain agendas in the schools to just take over and run the way they teach your kids, because you get indoctrinated that way. That's why sometimes I question the way the churches are run. But this is a whole other thing. I think we're too complicit in certain areas. I think that we allow people to control our narrative too much. And that's
let me ask you this,
Yes,
Andrew, real quick. It may seem like a tangent, but Putin, Ukraine, okay? What is or should be the African American position on that? Should there be perhaps what is the African American position with regards to the protection of democracy and liberal democracies? Let's say we're going to take a stand for this is we're part of this project or not, so on and so forth. Now it is a skew from the topic, but it bears upon the whole thing of having an agenda. So what would the agenda vis-a-vis American nationalism be within the Black body politic, if you will? What would that look like? If you can even speak specifically about Ukraine. Go ahead.
Well, Ukraine, there's certain other issues that are going on that we don't necessarily like, because some of our own people aren't treated as well as citizenry there. We could be left without anywhere to go, so we get stuck in the middle of everything as per usual. As a human, we're sympathetic to people suffering, but when we look at our own people, we tend to be at the bottom rung. We tend to be the first ones affected, and that gets very little to no press. It's just sometimes anytime we want to be 100% sympathetic, we're not allowed to be, because when you realize how some of us are being treated abroad, it kind of puts a bitter taste into how we want to feel as a human. So we're always have the asterisk on anything we state in these issues, because we all know that we're not treated 100%. We're barely accepted when we go some places, whether we excel or not. For us to do certain things, you have to be above board. Look at the Supreme Court appointee. She had to be above board, technically the most qualified person in history to do the thing, to even be acknowledged and nominated. Getting accepted 3 times by Congress and still being questioned again by people after they put her in position of powers prior. How are you going to question that? It becomes an issue. I mean, this is something that we have to look at. And I personally feel like, Ike, what you're doing, and all you panelists here, I appreciate what you're doing. we have to have a discussion and establish core values, because no matter where we go, if we tolerate crap, we will get crap. I think anything that we see that's bad, we need to make issue of it, even during these problems. Well, we are sorry for what's happening, but this is what's happening to us. We don't like it.
Right.
And once we start stating that and making that be known, no, I don't like it. Other groups get to make noise. Why can't we? We are very educated. We have influence and we have buying power. We need to use it.
But let me push back on Ike, because why we should not have a position on Ukraine, because that's their business, you know. So I don't.
That is a position. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying. Speaking
our
about
position collectively should be y'all handle y'all business, and because we got a whole bunch of stuff we got to handle over here.
Exactly, and that could be a position, but like Andrew said, coherent, concise, right? That is a position, but it seems like it's not heard, it's not known. There is no kind of a because, for example, we know about the lobbying groups that may lobby for other ethnic groups. We need not get into that, right? And they lobby for foreign policy and domestic policy as well. And we tend not to hear the African American position on certain things of this nature. So
can I say something to the Ukraine thing real quick? Because they already, United States already saying that we're bringing the refugees over here. We already got the Afghans over here, and they're getting a check from my tax paying dollars on the state and federal level.
Yeah.
But this Congressional Black Caucus and the House of Representatives has the audacity to saying they're going to vote on the HR Fuddy study bill. No, how about you actually X that, create a new one to where it's going to be money distributed for us. So we should be highly insulted about what is going on in Ukraine via the fact that you're bringing refugees over here. You have refugees from Afghan, and you're giving everybody a check, even illegal immigrants. And we're just sitting here. I'm not going to curse over here, but we're just sitting here looking stupid.
Okay, Dr. Thunder, your reaction to
So the thing is that we are. I think the issue is, and it's not just black folks. It's Americans in general are lazy. Okay, and so we like the idea of, hey, I want to be a conscientious citizen. I'll vote every 4 years. Because that is, and especially for black folks, because, my ancestors died for my right to vote. So I'll exercise my vote. But other than that, we don't do nothing. The real power in our form of government is not actually in the vote. Vote is important. Vote is powerful. But the real power is in contacting your representative. That's actually where the power is in our form of government, because if you do not, petition, write emails, call them, let them know what your positions are, then just voting for somebody it doesn't really do anything on the national level in particular. All right. Again, I would agree that voting and everything else on the local level is much more beneficial for us than on a national level. But most folks just go ahead.
I want to. I don't know where you stand on refugees, but you put this comment up. I'm sorry, I disagree. Refugees add to our economy and state. How so? Because when refugees, and especially what is that HR 11 thing, when you have a lot of immigrants from India and other countries come over here via the visa with corporations to save them money. There are thousands of people. Let's talk about on a local level. I worked in corporate for 20 years. Departments, thousands of people were laid off to make room for that HR 11. I forgot, but it's the title, HR something, for the immigrants to come over here and to work to save that corporation money. So refugees do not add to our economy. We pay more taxes to feed them and to house them and to give them a stipend, and they do take our job. So and then we need to limit illegals to zero, and definitely limit refugees completely.
Lion Legal, what do you have to say about what was introduced by Andrew here, which is that there needs to be concise, coherent, cogent, a concise message from the African American community? at least a set of values that are well understood. So that then, especially so that then, because I think what Andrew first presented, is then you can distribute, you can spread out to different parties if you know where home is, if you know where the core is, if you know what the values and whatever it may be is. But any thoughts on that line legal in addition to everything else that has been said?
If you decide to actually adhere to the tenets of Andrew's proposition, then you completely get away from the idea that you simply need a black face and every single problem you have is going to be solved. And that's the exact point. Once you know exactly what our values are, what our policies we'd like to see in place are, at that point, you can select the best candidates that are truly going to enact those, rather than to have a person that look like you will spend time in a public office and then at the end of it say, well, I would have loved to have passed this, but it was incredibly difficult and I tried my best. No, that's not going to cut it. So right from the start, it's good to set the agenda and to say, this is your job, this is what you're supposed to do.
Now, what do you stand on the refugee question? Now, I'm not sure about the empirical facts. I'm no economist, and there tends to be, in other words, the question of how immigration affects a community in a particular time. Now, I do know that there is a general lie that was told about tech, okay? And then I also know that there are incentives for any capitalist like myself to go out there and hire cheaper labor. It's like, well, why not? I don't even need a cover story, right? Like, you could just kind of know, I'll tell you anything. I'll give you any reason in order to go do that, right? So, however, Lion Legal, position on immigration, because in addition, in line with the whole coherent, cogent plan, I mentioned what should the African-American position be on certain things. On immigration, what should it be? And you may even say on Ukraine as well.
Well, I can, let me take the last point first, which is, what should the African-American position be on Ukraine? I saw today that there was some disturbing news stories of Africans trying to flee Ukraine. They were stopped at the border. They were on train. They had gotten onto trains and were removed from those trains. Then when they got to the border at Poland and some other places, they were turned back and stated that they had to stay while others were let through. I think that as Black people anywhere, we have to come together and have a similar point of view to want to help each other. Because the way that a African person is treated, I think, is the same way that a Black person anywhere is going to be treated in a different country. So politically, we should be, first of all, asking, why is these reports not in the mainstream news? Why is it not in the media? Why aren't newspapers picking this up? And then second of all, to state that your particular representatives have to point and have to say that, what do you expect these people to do? So they get into the border to escape impending death. Are you expecting them to go back there and then what happens? So it's crazy to me, and I think it's something that should be part of the Black agenda. And as far as immigration in general, any advanced economy will have immigration, whether you like it or not. Whether you say that we want jobs for only our people, because immigration affects you. The more successful you become, the more wealth you attain. You will also need to travel as well. It's just the way things are. You will travel more. You will go to different places. You may want to invest. You will also have corporations. You'll be concerned with hiring the best people too. So immigration does have benefits because of specialization, because of the fact that a global economy, an interconnected world, will have people from everywhere. So even if you don't like it, even if it might be somewhat cause concern, there are a lot of benefits to doing that. An exchange of ideas. Yeah,
I agree with you. There is benefits, and yes, we all need to travel, and this is a global world, networking, exchanging ideas. But when it comes to, and I always use this as an example, can I go to Mexico and become a citizen? No. Other countries, they have strict policies of outsiders coming in, wanting to work, wanting to become citizens in their country, because they want to make sure that they are providing for their people first. I cannot go to Mexico and it's right over a border to work. I will have to either work for the United States government and work for the Mexican government, or be married or have a relative that I'm kin to, and I have to live in Mexico probably for, I think, 7 years to 10 years before I can even become a citizen. So the fact is that I'm not welcoming your company to, in your country to come and work and the pursuit of happiness and to get a job and education, because there are stipulations that comes with that, right? Because they're looking after their people first. So the fact is that, yes, to a certain degree, immigration is a good thing, but it has to have its limits. And then we're talking about immigration. We're not even talking about the illegal immigrants, because our immigration system here is.
I just want to talk about.
Let me just say this: the immigration department that we have, it is a hot mess, and that was under Republican and Democrats. So.
Okay. Well. First of all, you're talking about immigration with a particular context of other countries that you could go to that may not treat you the same way that your own country is going to treat you. That's a contextual issue. That's not immigration in a vacuum by itself. That's an issue which obviously you would have to solve if you vote the right people in and they have the agenda that there has to be.
Let me go.
The reciprocity that every other country has to have the same laws in place that you have in place in your home state or your home country.
It's about the borders of your policy, basically. It's like, okay, you went from the idea of generally how do you feel about immigration, and then I think then you get down to the, well, what should the policy be? How many of X type of people do I want in? Because you mentioned, Lion Legal, that you can get big enough to the level where you start benefiting from these things. Also, you may even get so big that you're able to kind of influence policy. And you're saying, hey, you know what? Dana, maybe you have, you blow up and you're like, I need my special kind of category of visa so I can bring in these Vietnamese nail people, whatever it may be, right?
Well, why would I bring it outside when I can hire Americans?
I don't know what your position is going to be, right? But the point is, we need to be at the table where we're saying what our position is, right? It may be I don't want these type. It can't just be no people. That's all we're about, because there are people benefiting from bringing people, and maybe you want to get in the position of people.
Corporations are benefiting because they're saving money. Instead of
maybe you want to be that corporation.
Instead of me paying an employee $60,000, because I could pay them $30,000 just salary flat, and I don't got to give them benefits, which will cost me another $30,000, because there's two tiers with a salary. It's the salary that you take home, and it's the benefits that the company has to pay you. So if I could save 30 grand, of course I'm going to open up the doors to India or wherever else to come on in. But at the same token, you are eliminating jobs for Americans.
Okay, yeah. So Andrew and then Dr. Thunder, on this immigration point, please. You can say whatever you want about it, but if you don't mind answering this question of looking at the levers in this immigration operating machine here, and understanding that immigration is a complex deal, but it needs to happen, right? It needs to be flow in and out, trade and all this kind of stuff. It needs to happen, okay? But you can control it in a way that benefits you, okay? You can control it economically, tariff-wise, so on and so forth, in terms of the trade level. Also, there is the immigration policy. And it's usually not very simple. And sometimes you may want to benefit from some of the things that you're claiming those in power are benefiting from right now. Is that a crazy thing? First of all, Andrew, and then Dr. Thunder.
Well, being a first generation in this country, I understand your opinion on it because I was raised here. But you have to understand that technology is changing the way people work to begin with. The way we operate, it's totally different. Sorry. Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. The way we function in this country is different. Technology is eliminating a lot of jobs. Amazon is allowing people to be independent contractors now, overworking as employees. So that's a big issue. Jobs are becoming more savvy. The ones that tend to be more available are your general labor that a lot of us in America don't want to do and don't want to deal with. Immigrants that come from certain countries in Africa, a lot of them are educated, not as, ill-informed. I mean, I know several people from Africa and the Caribbean that come here with a certain skill set as well, and they contribute to the economy right away. They participate. They hire people from the country. And that's my observation. Granted, there are people from other countries that tend to get perks, bonuses, grants from the federal government that we didn't get. That's one of the last issues Martin Luther King spoke about. That's a fact. I mean, immigration is supposed to reflect the current population status as is. So if the country's made up of 12.5% African Americans, then that's what they're going to allow in from immigration. My other issue is there happen to be people of a certain race that tend to come in illegally more than others. But we'll talk about the ones from the African diaspora as a problem. There are other groups that come in larger numbers that commit more crimes, but we don't speak on that. We don't speak on certain people that were allowed to have anchor babies in Florida in certain hotels owned by a certain person that was in office at one point that housed these people to have babies born here and then go back overseas. We don't speak on those things. That just happens to be issues that no one really talks about, but we tend to hammer us about it. Numerically, we're not that relevant.
Hammer us? What do you mean?
Well, as minorities, the percentage that we come in at is not going to affect the country at the same scale as other groups.
Black immigrants?
Well, part of the African diaspora, yeah.
Well, one of the things, okay, let me just say this, because when it comes to immigration, is very complex. It was Foundational Black Americans / ADOS that pushed for Black immigrants to come here because they were coming less than 1%. So after the Civil Rights Act was passed, the Naturalization Act followed, which we made sure, we as in Foundational Black Americans made sure that it is a certain quota that you allow Black immigrants throughout the diaspora to come here to America. We made that happen for Black people throughout the diaspora. So I don't have a problem with that. The thing is, the fact is that I've never heard of, because it's 12% of Black Americans, then you have to allow 12% in, because that is not happening. The illegal immigrants, Haitians, are treated like shit at the border. And I say, let them in before the Mexicans. See, that's where I'm at with it. But when I'm talking about immigrants as a whole, because if you're not going to let the Haitians in, don't let nobody in illegally, because they're illegal. Follow the proper procedures. But when I'm talking about as far as jobs, I don't see the Black immigrants coming over here taking American jobs as I do Indians, Asians, or even some Mexicans or South Americans, depending on what that job may be. So let's take the African immigrants that come over here. No, they do come over here. They're more so in the tech, in the high paying job sectors. But a regular American folk, I'm talking about the middle class, their jobs are being eliminated because of the refugees or because of the illegal immigrants and some of the immigrants as well.
So, Dr. Thunder, two things. First of all, acknowledge the super chat, and then your thoughts on this immigration thing, and then we'll go to K Polymath, right? So, shout out to the super chatter.
Yeah, one Titan, $4.99. Thank you very much. Azov is a neo-Nazi regime that is embedded in the Ukrainian government and army. Putin wants to take them out. It's not the only reason, but it's one of them. Yeah. So one thing, it always raises like a big question mark to me. I've heard a number of, Black folks tending to be left-leaning Black folks, ministers even, suggest that we need to, view these folks that are coming across the border in the south of the country. we need to view them with more compassion, and if we expect folks to treat us well, then we need to treat them well, and all of these kinds of these lines of thought. I have a lot of problems with that, because what's happening is the folks that are coming across are literally competing for the jobs that we might have. Now, what these politicians will say is, but they're taking jobs that Americans don't want. Do Americans want those jobs? That's always a line that you hear them say frequently. But the thing is that the money has to be coming from somewhere. And if the government is not going to, push money towards, things that are needed in the Black community, but is having money diverted to, illegal aliens, refugees, and the like, instead, it's like, come on. I understand how math works. When they try to say, oh, those are separate issues, that's not going to go. Look, you have a pool of money. If you spend money here, you can't spend it there. I understand that principle. Anybody understands that principle. So, yeah, I have an issue with that, and it's not because I have disdain for my fellow man or anything like that, but it's for an earlier point that I made. And that point is, everyone is biased. I just tell you what my bias is. My bias is for Black men and boys. And so it makes it very easy for me when I look at these kinds of issues and say, well, how is, a bunch of refugees and illegal aliens and all like that, giving them, voting rights and insurance and all this kind of stuff. How is that helping Black men and boys? And when the answer is no, it's not, it clearly is not, then it makes it's easy for me.
Right.
So
you cutting them a check, but you can't cut me a check. So, and I'm adding that on to it, because I look at it like this. Listen, my number one priority when it comes to Black people, especially foundational Black Americans, is economic empowerment. And one of those things that economic empowerment is reparations. And I am pro reparations and will be to the day I die. I don't give a damn about refugees or illegals or immigrants. Well, let's just say illegals and refugees getting free money and I didn't get mine. So why would I push for that? Out of compassion. Do you have compassion for me? Do you have compassion for the ghettos that we were put in the public policies that was intentionally created to decimate the Black family and the Black community?
Yep.
Where's our repair? You're repairing the Afghans and the Ukrainians. They didn't even ask for the help, but the Afghans was asking for the damn help, leaving their wives and children behind like cowards. But where's our repair?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So this voice, I like, Andrew's out of here now. He mentioned the concise and coherent, cogent voice about the position of ethnic groups, African Americans in this case, regarding policy positions. Remember, we're coming from Ketanji Jackson, I believe her name is. She was nominated, fulfilling a promise by Joe Biden to the Supreme Court. And now we're going to go to K Polymath, I believe.
I want to know. I want to know. Tech and Wanderlust. I've been kind of checking out some of the comments. I mean, it's obvious that there's a particular political persuasion, perspective that's present. I want to know what he's taken issue to. It's hard to know exactly what the issue is. Come on up on the panel.
He's a man with a deep heart and a feeling of for the people, and all his comments have represented such. And he's gonna swallow. He's gonna take the compassion thing the whole way, and So, K Polymath.
Wait, isn't that Donovan Sharp? Or it looks like him. I have a question for.
That's wrong, man.
I have a question for the Black Americans on this panel, and the question is, where do you put the line of separation? So the question is specifically for Dr. Thunder on the Black men and boys, and for the lovely sister and the lovely other brother. I don't think he's American though. The question is, let's say affirmative action, its purpose was to help apparently Black people and white women. However, end up helping white women and upper class, more educationally gifted, or rather, placed Black folks, and it kind of didn't allow the so-called, the average Black man to be able to reach the next step. Also, it helped African immigrants who basically had parents who were both educated, and then the kids obviously followed suit. So it helped Africans, very rich or rather elite Black Americans, and white women. So where do you put the line of separation? Should these policies help the average Black man? And if so, where is the average Black man in this panel? All I see is elitist on this panel.
Yes, the elitist African American Black man on this panel, Dr. Thunder. Please go ahead and answer for yourselves.
Yeah, that's interesting.
What makes
so
elitist?
Okay, if I may paraphrase what K Polymath is saying here, not that he's an elitist per se, but that he is part of the elite, that this is not the average what is the position of the average African American man, and that he doesn't see an average African American man.
I'm just joking. Go ahead.
Oh, he doesn't see an average African American man on this panel. So what's going on here?
Average African American man.
Oh, okay. So Dana, you're gonna play like, come on.
No, we know
because
what average person is, and it's not Dr. Thunder.
About professions, because even if it's a middle class African American man in the middle class, his intellect could be elitist. You know what I'm saying? He got a high intellect.
Okay, so good. I like the question then, and let's be precise about it. On intelligence, Dr. Thunder is way above average. On the level of education, he's got a PhD, way above average. He's a tenured professor at Ohio State University. All these things are just
right.
Yeah, all that stuff.
But that doesn't make me think. And I don't have those things that he has, but the fact is that intellectually, I would say I am his peer. We're on the same level.
You're not a Black man though, because I think the whole question was.
Oh, obviously, you're a Black person, but okay.
Yeah. But you'll get to answer too, because he's asking about for the African Americans on the panel, but it's about Black men. Because there is a, if, and go ahead, correct me if I'm wrong there, K Polymath, but basically the policies have not helped Black men. And should they help the average Black man? Because they've helped the elite Black man, according to him. And he doesn't see the average Black man here. So beginning with Dr. Thunder and then Dana.
Yeah, so I take the point. And actually earlier when I was talking about my dad, and how, I mean, he's the high IQ, he's an MBA, and when he retired, he was the highest ranking bureaucrat, non-elected bureaucrat in the state, in Michigan, state government. But they counted him as an affirmative action hire, right? So they got to check a box with him. One of the issues in the university system is that so first of all, there are 20,000 fewer Black men than Black females in the academy. 20,000 fewer, right? So I'm a unicorn in the academy. Now, one of the things that incentivizes this sort of lopsided and something that definitely is contributing to issues in the Black community is that they get to check two boxes for hiring a Black female, because of Title IX, women are counted as a minority. So in our community, that has created all kinds of issues. Now, I would argue that if affirmative action was going to actually be effective, you don't count it when you find the most intelligent person, the most qualified person, for the position. You count it when you find someone that is in the middle, then you count it as an affirmative action hire, because then you're actually doing something that would actually over time could benefit in to find the most intelligent, most talented, the person and say, oh, hey, this is my affirmative action hire. That doesn't seem to serve the purpose, the underlying purpose of affirmative action, right? That person should be able to get a job anywhere, anyhow. But because of the history of racism, questionable hiring practices, everything else, basically that's what's happened. So you basically only end up with the elite, right. You only end up with certain folks that they esteem to be elite to even get a shot, which I think there's a problem with that.
So, Dana, I would like to hear your notion on this, because what I'm hearing here, part of what I'm hearing here is that, this affirmative action thing is targeted at certain high levels. Like, oh, we need this number of people to get into Harvard. And you're like, what the hell does that have to do with, the
as
common,
far as affirmative action,
common life, right?
Affirmative action initially was for Black people. And this was, late 50s and the 60s and 60s, the creation of affirmative action. Black people never benefit from affirmative action. So when you say affirmative action, people automatically think Black. No, it was supposed to be for us. But number one, white women, I believe we have a white woman in the chat, the anesthesiologist, benefited from affirmative action. And they still do.
84% of the recipients were white women.
So Black people never benefit from affirmative action. So wherever you see us climb, whether it's corporate, business, whatever, we did it on our own merit. That's why we are unique. We immigrants benefit from affirmative actions before Black people. So I'm just tired of people when they say affirmative action, you think Black. And again, that is somewhat to the ignorance that people have, especially when it comes to the plight of foundational Black Americans here in America. You do not know our history. You do not know what we've been through and continue to go through. We are a unique set of people. So, and that was, and I don't know what question you want me to answer, because, Dr. Thunder kind of laid a lot of out, and the question I think was pretty loaded. So just remind me if we're going back.
So go ahead, Key Parliament, go ahead.
Yeah, so the second part of the question, Dr. Thunder did answer the main part, is why are we so focused on elitist groups like Harvard, Princeton, and the representation in these areas, rather than focusing on this is the average Black man, meaning majority of Black people. Let's define it that way, okay? The way majority of people think, feel, vote, etc. So why don't we create situations such as, let's say, skills, carpentry, computing skills? Because when I was younger, now this is different, this is a UK perspective, but same issues was here. What I noticed is there were a lot of like technology skills that were basically aimed for white boys, poor and rich. But these skills were never really aimed at the Black community, whether woman or man. They're sort of just aimed there. So what you see is the Black people competing for jobs where it's lawyers, doctors, engineers, but there's a huge skill gap, like carpentry, computing, tech specialist, etc. That was so open. The pay was much better without even a degree. But what I've noticed is it was so difficult as a Black person to get into these fields without the degree. So why isn't that we don't lobby for actually these sort of middle ground jobs which actually have money in them? We focus only on this, this idea of symbolism of the elitist colleges and so-called fields.
The state of Black America is not in a good state, and we are really to blame. And I'm going back to what I said in the beginning as far as accountability. And you hit on something as far as, yes, everyone don't want to be a doctor, a lawyer. However, those numbers are decreasing drastically when it comes to foundational Black Americans. I do see more Black immigrants going into those fields. And I'm just going to hold that right there because I'm going to swing back to that. But as far as the trades and, carpentry or whatever, working with your hands, they took a lot of those programs out of the schools. They kept it in suburbia, but they took it out of schools. So that's when I go back to public policy. was a direct effect to decimate the Black community. That was a public policy on a state and local level, right? And federal kind of trickles down. But those programs were intentionally taken out of our schools. We had them for a certain amount of time, but when you get to the 1990s, that's when they started to just completely disappear, never came back. Also, Foundational Black Americans, when you look at the Black family, the structure, which is, majority led by single parents, mainly single mothers, as opposed to Black immigrants, right? When you do come, more likely coming from a two-parent household, whether you just came over here or you are the first generation, that plays a lot when it comes to your education because you're coming from a stable background. One of the good things I would say about Black immigrants, you are filling a gap when it comes to doctors and lawyers, because check off Black, right? Unless they have a box saying, are you a Black immigrant? But 9 times out of 10, you are placed with us. So without Black immigrants, what would our population look like? However, I do question your ideology and what do you know about the Black Americans, the African Americans, or what are your stereotypes that you may have, which may cause a disconnect to a certain level, because the Africans that came over here in large droves at the end of the 90s going into the 2000s, that's where you see a big shift of Black immigrants coming over here, which was intentionally done to kind of separate or to put one over the Black Americans. Before that, if you came from Haiti, Jamaica, or any country in Africa before the 2000s, you automatically embedded yourself with Black people in the Black community. It was at a lower level, but when we see more Black immigrants coming over here, it's by design, and it's really by design to separate us, for us not to unite. So just going back to what you was highlighting is the average Black American and the elitist, there are a lot of factors as into why we are not in certain industries. They take those specialties out of the schools. The family, the Foundation Black American family is basically non-existent. And if you don't have a stable family lifestyle, then your upbringing could be difficult, and as far as, and which can determine your limit of education. And a lot of Black people are just not majoring or specializing in STEM because, again, that's where the money is at. To where if you see immigrants, particularly Black immigrants, they're majoring in the STEM. They're majoring in the sectors that bring in a lot of money. So there are intentional factors that play a part to why you don't see more Black people, Black Americans advancing. There's also that accountability to where our community is just in a disarray.
Yeah, can I ask one question, please?
Go ahead.
Elite King over there. Okay, so the question is actually is by a comment by Colin Okoye. He says I'm the only Black judge who is an attorney in my county. I only know 2 other Black African Americans.
Wait, hold on. First of all, you're gonna need to acknowledge the super chat because
Okay.
if you're gonna be, you're gonna need to put in some work to get all this airtime here. So, go ahead.
Let's see. Spiritual Logic, aka Hope. Thanks for the $10 super chat, and I'm assuming that is an Android. So welcome to my world. There will always be biased and some form of discrimination. Sadly, it's part of the human condition. The only way around this is AI and technology, and that's the government agenda to our detriment. Unfortunately, even with AI, according
AI
to the researchers at Google, is more racist actually than people, based on the data that it collects and takes in. So that's also unfortunately not a solution yet. So let me go from Colin Okoye's point. He was saying that he's the only Black judge in his county who's both an attorney and a judge. And he said one of the issues keeping Black African Americans from this sort of fields, and I would include sort of medical fields as well, is getting a criminal record early on. Now, why isn't it that we can look at sort of these issues as Black people and say, okay, we know that the government, again, I suffered racism too, right? You do the same crime as someone else, but because of their affiliations is separate from yours, you get punished and outed as the bad person with real consequences. They don't, not to the same statistical extent. So why can't we as Black people then form lobbyist groups at both, local and national level to vote specific issues like this? So if, for example, you got a criminal record under 18 or even between 18 to 25, and it's been 5 years, it gets completely hidden. None of this whole, it gets spent after 8 years, but then you can really still check on it. It just gets removed completely if it's not, murder or whatever it is. And that would kind of help solve specific issues in the community. What do you guys think about that?
I think.
Okay, I'll make a quick comment here, and then you guys can kind of clarify, because I think that what Andrew came in with was saying that, look, we're going to need to be programmatic, pragmatic, and we need to get administrative about this thing. We need to get down to brass tacks. It is in line with all the local stuff that you guys have been saying as well, right? So local side, there's okay, get down to brass tacks, and then K-Parliament is saying, well, why can't we do it? Okay, and there's some things that come to mind when that question is asked. I'm not going to answer it, but I just wanted to make that comment there. Go ahead, first Dana, and then Dr. Thunder, and I also want Lion Legal to chime into this in terms of why can't we form these? Why can't we actually get to the work?
There definitely need to be organizations, and there are organizations that try to help Black youth if they have a criminal record, but it needs to be more done. But for instance, I live in New Jersey. We do not elect our judges, prosecutors. Some other states, a lot of other states, they elect their judges, prosecutions, sheriffs, or whatever. In New Jersey, we don't elect them. There are assigned, which and New Jersey is really one of the racist states here in the United States. So they are selected, right, by the powers that be. So which means we don't have control over who's passing down these harsher sentences. If you do the crime, yes, you should be punished. However, if you are a white person, you're either going to get probation or a lesser sentence. Whereas a Black person, they're going to punish you with a more harsher sentence. So what can we do if, let's say in New Jersey, these people who decide those rulings are not elected? I can't vote them in or vote them out. So what do? Right? That becomes more of a insider legal political issue. Well, you need money. You need politicians on your side. And that's where you have the dirty part of politics, because you're going to have to pay for these politicians. We don't even have money to pay politicians to vote or assign certain peoples, or just to get legislation that can benefit us, because we do not practice in the science of politics. So it really comes down to an economic issue. If you don't have money to pay for legal representation as a collective group, or if you don't have money to pay a politician, then you're really not going to have anything established to benefit Black people, particularly the Black youth. So,
okay, so Dr. Thunder, where the money at? And then Legal Lion. So Dana's made it clear we need money, so fund it. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Dee is saying, she says the clandestine shadow oligarchs of this country want you distracted and going at each other's throats. Immigrants are not the enemy. Yeah, I agree that immigrants are not the enemy. No, immigrants are not the enemy. But I think that is a powerful strategy, an effective strategy that gets used against Black folks that are just trying to advocate for things that are going to actually serve their communities, right? And as I said, everyone is biased. Everyone has a particular bias. So since everyone has a particular bias, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's okay, because we're individuals. We're going to have a particular perspective. Again, the folks that try to act like they don't have a bias, or that they value people that can be impartial, as it were. All that shows is that they have a particular bias that they're trying to cloak. They don't want people to know about what their bias is, and or they themselves aren't even aware of their own bias, and that's a dangerous, that's dangerous. So, but using the sort of the immigrants are not the enemy sort of strategy, that's effective because it makes you feel like an a-hole for saying, things that are specific to interests that you have at all costs, and if that means that you have to favor that over these other issues, which they're trying to smuggle in, they're trying to sneak those in, that kind of stuff. And so I don't play the game anymore. As I said before, I just tell people what my bias is from the jump, and then they'll understand that they won't be able to smuggle in any of that other stuff. They won't be able to make me feel bad because of immigrant stuff or anything like this. I look, that's not even on my list of issues. It doesn't even make my list.
And you're going to address the super chat in a second. But basically,
yeah, I'll address it right now. And Andrew Walker, $20 super chat. Thank you very much. And he says we can start by teaching our young men how to make a tie before they learn how learn to make a do-rag. Okay. We recreate a core pride and accountability within our group. We need to show and be able to accept and give love and respect to each other.
Okay, yep. So he covered several grounds there. He covered the, shall we say, the aesthetic appearance ground. Pull up your pants, put on a tie. We have to present in a certain way. He talked about the love and the stuff. Okay, good ground covered there. Now, Dr. Thunder.
Now wait a minute, D. Hold up, D. D. Wait a minute. D is she's commenting to my comment. She was saying something to what I was saying. She says, "We are all immigrants, Dr. Thunder." No, we are not.
No,
I am not an immigrant.
I thought you said you don't fall for it anymore, Dr. Thunder.
Can we all pick up? Can we all do our research on the history?
Yeah, I am not an immigrant.
America.
Okay.
I'm a descendant of slavery.
She's getting y'all.
Oh God, here we go. Okay.
No. Let me put it this way. Okay. To be a liberal democracy means that there has to be a playing field of legitimate ideas that oppose each other, right? That you don't have to like question fundamentally and say, "Oh, you're an idiot for doing this." Like, okay, one can be against. One can say, "Hey, maybe I want this kind of redistribution of wealth," and this other person says, "No distribution of wealth." That's within the legal playing field, right? And within that, okay, or should I say legitimate? Within that, you're going to have people taking advantage of people. In other words, what D is saying is true, but it doesn't matter. What I mean by that is this. You're going to have people pitting other people against each other based on who the hypothetical boogeyman is, right? That's what you do when you have a certain amount of power and you're trying to influence votes, right? But it doesn't, as long as these are legitimate points to take. Hey, you're saying I take this particular point, these particular preferences when it comes to immigration. And it doesn't matter that your position is used as a way of fooling other people. It's still a legitimate position to take. So,
can I just say one more thing about immigrants?
Go ahead.
Because let me just say this is talking about practicing group politics. Immigrants, that's what they do when they come over here. They practice group politics within their own group. They hire within their own group. So I don't understand why some immigrants get offended when Americans say, yes, we need a border or pull back on the refugees or blah, blah, blah. Immigrants practice politics collectively within their group, not because, I don't want to deal with Black Americans or just Americans. It's because, you get stuff done here in America quicker, faster, and more because you are collectively coming together saying, hey, we're going to purchase homes, be homeowners. We're going to put business down. And being that this is a capitalist society, the American government loves that. But if we're going to do this, this is what we need. And so the American government is going to come to you, or the politicians are going to say, hey, I'll do all this stuff for you because, your business owners, your homeowners, and you're collectively putting your money together. Black people here in America, we need to start practicing group economics, and we do not. But immigrants, y'all do stay within your own, and you hire within your own.
100%. And then I'll have Lion Legal kind of go on the questions, the several questions that the K Polymath has put on the table amongst the
we got to start wrapping this up too.
Exactly. A very exciting and dynamic conversation we've been having here today. And thank you very much for all the super chats and all the contributions. But we do have to land the plane at some point. However, okay, I always want to acknowledge the fact that the staying within oneself is a cultural thing. And there is a cultural, in other words, there's typically the question within the ADOS community about that kind of staying together and doing the kinds of things and being on code, right? That these other groups tend to do. And it is not a simple problem to solve because these groups are not as coordinated as you think. What do I mean by that? I mean, for them, it's just in the water, right? It's almost like the things that you do. Nobody tells the Nigerian to love money and do whatever, right? It's like, you're going to do it. And then when you see another Nigerian, I like to say this one, Dr. Thunder, I like to say this. When you see another Nigerian, there's certain reasons why you may want to collaborate with him because you guys have a certain understanding of how to operate in the world with regards to rules in particular, okay? Nigerians and our group, we're like, when we see a rule, we're like, okay, how do I get around that? That's the only thing we see, okay? So rather than go talk to a Bangladeshi guy and see how he is with regards to operating and doing things like that, you say, hey, that's a Nigerian guy over there. I think, he's got a secret handshake. We can go there. But anyways, Lion Legal, and then we'll start wrapping this up.
Hi. What was the question? Sorry.
Oh, so basically, K Polymath here has been talking about why we cannot, do certain things collectively, coherently,
okay,
right? In terms of power-based grassroots go up, and you can,
Yeah, the issue is not about individual laws or initiatives or saying that you will now wipe the criminal record of it. First of all, it's not every black person that has a criminal record. So even the idea that wiping criminal records is something that is specifically for the black community, I think that has a little bit of stereotypical thinking and is a bit misplaced, although I do like Polymath. I think he has some interesting ideas, but on that particular idea, I don't think it's about these individual policies. It's about creating our own institutions, because at that point you don't have to rely on other people. Even if, for example, a person comes in, he doesn't have a record, he doesn't have this, he's a great student. Even if he gets in positions, he can be made so uncomfortable that he will leave that environment, sue. And this has actually come out. There are a lot of tech companies which are in the news in California and all of the tech havens out there. There are several black tech workers that have sued as a result of how they felt. So even in legal jurisprudence, it's clear that something is going. And to even get into these companies, you have to be highly qualified. Highly qualified. I'm sure that some of them have come from Stanford. They have the education. It's not about having a record or this or that. It's about the whole institution itself. If you get executives, managers that come from where you come from and are happy to see you, they love having you in the work environment, because even apart from talking about work, they can talk about things like things that they enjoy doing in their spare time, sports, etc. They will look at you as part of their family. They will look at you as part of their family, not as somebody that they were forced to hire and now they have to put up with you. Additionally, I'll say that this talk of African immigrants is completely misplaced. Most Africans coming on student visas. The African immigrant population in the US is probably the smallest immigrant population. The smallest immigrant population there compared to other immigrant populations. Additionally, what do you expect them to do? To come in, not to strive to get a good job, not to strive to provide for their families, not to avail themselves of opportunities that are there. What kind of life is? What kind of logic is that?
I got it.
Going to a different. The whole point of going to a different country is to make sure that you can do the best in that country that you go to and become successful based on what's available there. Whether it's an African that goes to Ukraine, an African that goes to the States, no matter where they go. So
can I say something?
Like I just want to finish the point because
okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Quite a while to make the point. So we should actually applaud people that come, that try to make the best that they can, do the best that they can. And the sad part of it is that they still experience racism too, which is a cruel irony, because now they're being told that you should not be here, but yet they have to deal with the same slights, the same discourtesy, the similar abuse that everybody else does. I mean, look at the statistics of how many Africans are actually coming in, the way that they're treated before this castigation and before they are admonished in this way.
So, Dr. Thunder, because we're gonna wrap it up, and then you're gonna give your final thoughts and also with response to what Lion Legal is saying. Okay. But what I want to do is start with K Polymath, and then and I believe Lion Legal, you've gotten your ideas here and your appeal, your last volley, your last hurrah for the immigrant community. We hear you. A laudable job, sir. And then K Polymath, and then Dana, and then Dr. Thunder. But basically, there's a question. I want you to only spend 2 minutes on the question, and then just your final thoughts. So overall, 3 minutes max for three of you guys. Basically, the question is this: Joe Biden promised openly that he would nominate a black woman. Some people say that this kind of open, naked display of tokenism or identity politics is not. It doesn't smell right to them. That just to go out there and have everybody now say, hey, you know what? You get 3 and you get 6, you get 2.5. That this kind of open wheeling and dealing is perhaps not healthy for the democracy. What are your thoughts on that, very quickly? And then final thoughts. You got 3 minutes. Go, and then Dana, and then Dr. Thunder. You get a little bit more to kind of respond to what Lion Legal said. But anyways, go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah, so I actually think that that smells especially right, because if you're gonna appoint people, you're gonna have a reason, and you have to be specific about what you're doing. This whole woo thing of, well, this is the most qualified person for the job, and it just happened. I don't believe in that. This is the most qualified person for the job, and I'm choosing them just for you. This is who I want you to vote for me, and if we work together, we're gonna be able to do big things. I think that that's actually how it should be done, because over in Africa, that's exactly how it's done. You vote for the person, you tell, I'm going to put a Kikuyu vice chancellor, and that's how it is. I think there's nothing wrong with that, because what it means is, first of all, you begin to learn and appreciate whether the person you're voting for actually keeps to their promises. That's one. 2, it means that if you're actually smart, you could bring them these things to the table and say, okay, this is what we want. We want a first black woman, whatever it is, vice chancellor of Kaizoran University, and you have an agenda that you want to put through that as a lobbyist group that's going to be orchestrated by this woman. You look at her background. You don't just look at only the black part, but you look at the qualities, the specifics of her background. What has she done before? What is her political affiliations? What is she willing to do, etc. So I think there's nothing wrong with it as long as you are strategic in your placing, and then you have something to back it, something to push the narratives and the focus on. My final thoughts are simple. We got to do better, be better.
All right. Okay. Go ahead. Yeah. Not bad mic drop over there. Final thoughts: be better, do better. Prior thoughts were basically agreeing with the Dr. Thunder approach of, go ahead and state your biases up front. I don't care. Go ahead, tell me what you're doing. This makes it easier, as a matter of fact. And maybe we can get over that whole dance of whose face is there, and I'm just going to nakedly push my agenda based on policies and such, and this is my person that I want you to put in, blah, blah, blah. So, Dana, final thoughts, and also the question, is it good that Joe Biden just openly says, I'm going to put exactly African-American woman in there, and then therefore vote for me?
I don't really care if she was black or whatever, because who pushed for him to elect a black woman was the black elitists, particularly the black elitist women, right? And just to that, I wrote down some stuff so that I won't forget. Substance over symbolism. We need to, specifically, Black Americans need to focus on substance.
Yeah.
Stop focusing on stop being distracted by symbolism. These conversations need to be more popular on YouTube and any other social media. However, if we want to talk about Cardi B, everyone focus their attention on that. So too much focus on nonsense and not on the substance. So is she bringing any substance? Already she's been outed, and her ruling has been questioned, especially when it comes to Black America. So I do question her motives. She is a pawn to play on the Democrats. The Supreme Court is to protect the Constitution, and they did so when they kind of voted against the Biden administration when it came to the mandates, even though they left a little bit of loophole in there. But what this woman did as a federal judge is inexcusable for all Americans, and it's especially going to hurt Black Americans in the long run. And as for Black Americans, I always say this: yes, we do have a problem, and we need to start fixing our problem and taking accountability, and start working on a local level. Because when we talk about the immigrants or refugees or whatever, if today the federal government say, oh, this piece of land or this state is just for foundational Black Americans, do we have builders? Can we take a land and build? No, we cannot. We don't have enough builders. We don't have enough people in STEM trades. So we need to focus on that, then focus on what color somebody is in these Supreme Court positions. And so building substance, and also when it comes to immigrants, particularly Black immigrants, for me personally, I'm going to support a Black immigrant over an Asian, over a Middle Eastern or whatever. When I see Black immigrants, I don't even know if you're an immigrant until maybe if it's a Jamaican store or African store or whatever. I'm going to support them first. Now, the only reason why I may have a little bit of pushback is if you open up your mouth and ignorance come out. And that's just with anybody straight across the board. But I would like to see foundational Black Americans and Black immigrants get back to that collective group of people actually working together and building together like we once were, because I'm seeing a big disconnect with that. So substance, building, and collectively working together.
Excellent point. Okay, go ahead. SBC, substance, building, and collectively working together. Go ahead, Dr. Thunder. What's your last thoughts?
Yes. So first, let me do some shameless plugging. I will be interviewing Bernard Riley on my Conversations with Dr. Thunder. That'll be tomorrow night. That video will premiere on Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So check that out. Also, I did a live stream called The Bamboozling of the Black Male Image, and that was my Thunder's thoughts for this past week. You can check that out. And I'm looking to do a live stream on the topic why cussing and breaking the law is actually not a sin. So that'll be spicy when that'll happen this week sometime. So keep your ear to the ground on that. It'll probably be early morning stream. All right. So I did want to comment to Lion Legal. Always appreciate his input and support. So please, keep supporting the channel and continue to be part of the discussion. Much appreciated. So my view on immigrants is the same as with my personal finances. So let me explain. So I have a family, I have a mortgage, I have all these things that I need to do to take care of my family. So even if I see a homeless person, and yes, I would like to help the homeless person, but I can't help the homeless person beyond my ability to take care of my family. Okay. So, for instance, say if I'm at a deficit each month, I'm not making enough money to pay all of the bills. I'm always have a question mark as to if something is going to get paid or not. I have to decide which bill I'm going to pay, this month and which ones I'm not going to pay. Giving the homeless guy money is not going to be on my priority list. That's not because I don't care about human beings. I don't care about my fellow man. It's none of that. It's that I have a specific responsibility and I must prioritize that. I'm a husband and a father. I have certain things that I must do first. Okay. And so that's why I have an issue with even entertaining the perspectives of folks that want to immigrate over significant issues faced by Black Americans, stuff that has not been addressed. Okay. And as I said before, I'm biased, and my bias is Black men and boys. I will always lean towards issues with respect to Black men and boys. It will always be that way. Okay. Now, as far as this Supreme Court nomination, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan for a bunch of reasons, but the primary reason, I already told you this. I've said this over and over. My bias is Black men and boys. I don't see anything to suggest that she is going to do something that will significantly improve the situation for Black men and boys. Rather, I see her as a status quo that will just continue on the same stuff that's been happening. No improvement, and maybe even worse.
And maybe even worse. Dum dum
That's why.
dum. Ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to a close. Okay,
Can I
we
say
have
one more thing?
Oh, go ahead.
I just want, I didn't say thank you for having me again. So anytime you want me to come, just let me know. Thank you so much. I love your topics.
Well,
thank you
yeah.
both. And then you can also come on over to my platform as well, especially on the Man Up Thursdays with the judge. So I like to have.
What is your channel, by the way? Can some of the moderators go out there and drop your channel?
The Real Dana. So The Real Dana on YouTube, and Thursday night is fiery night. It's called Man Up. It's Man Up with Judge Joe Brown, but that's catered more specifically for topics for Black men and Black people, but particularly Black men and young boys. But a lot of people I have on my panel, they are all men and young men. So I would love for y'all to come up anytime.
Sure. Excellent. So again, Eisen, please go ahead and find The Real Dana. Drop her link down there. Make sure you guys go ahead and subscribe. And yes, we'll be glad to have you back. Now we've established that, like face does not necessarily mean you're being represented. A Black face does not necessarily mean Black interest. There needs to be a coherent and cogent front as to what the Black interests actually are at this stage in the game, rather than play the symbolism over, shall we say, I said SBC, so symbolism, there was the B and then there was the C. But now it escapes me. But basically, the idea is this: African Americans need to understand what their positions are on these various topics. There's a wide breadth of legitimate topics that can be discussed. That doesn't make you less or more Black, right? And one of the important psychological aspects of the conversation that we had was the whole Uncle Tomism, okay, which makes it such that you only tend to get one side of the ideology presented its blackface, because any other side or anything tangential, whatever, or anything complex, okay, anything unorthodox, anything heterodox is looked upon as, well, that's not authentically black. Hence, it's a whole swindle, bamboozle, and you know why it's going to continue being played unless and until a few people, okay, this doesn't take a lot. It's always a few people whom are adequately agitated for action and who take coherent action can then change things. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace. We are gone. Yes, and I see the Real Dana channel on there. Please, you guys go ahead and subscribe. Until next time, we're out.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what's a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what dwells behind the curtain, the face of evil smirking with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. Hey, I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.